Hello, fellow colleagues. My name's Richard Young, and we will be talking about behavior change and exercise. Although scholars have had their own definitions of exercise for years, it is important for people to maintain their own definition of exercise. The essence of this research centers around each individual's relationship toward exercise as it relates to behavioral change. So let's start. What is exercise? As for Merriam-Webster, with its plethora of definitions of exercise, a few of them are the act of bringing into play or realizing an action, bodily exertion for the sake of developing and maintaining physical fitness, something performed or practiced in order to develop, improve, or display a specific capability or skill, a performance or activity having a strongly marked secondary or ulterior aspect. So I wouldn't bet all my money that this is the true definitions of exercise, but it gives us a better general idea of where to start looking. I would like to talk about my definition of exercise. But before I do, I want to explain my motto. My motto is movement is life. So in everyday life, what gets us around movement? Because without movement, we are nothing. So now for my definition. Accomplishing and coordinating a task for a specified amount of time, deviating from normal everyday activity. Now, this is my definition of exercise. Yeah, I know, this guy's crazy, he's an idiot. It's okay, we can just go ahead and toss this one out. So this brings me to my next point. Exercise has been the subject of debate in many recent years. So anyone you ask, each person you may ask, may have a different definition for exercise. But I think the American College of Sports Medicine has the almost perfect definition of exercise, which is any sport or activity that works large group of muscles is continually maintained and performed rhythmically. Now, you could say that's a generic type, but they also go into more detail about this by giving you recommendations for how much you should do each day. So, cardiorespiratory exercise per the ACSM recommends each week people should exercise moderately for about 2.5 hours. These suggestions can be met through 30 to 60 minutes of moderate exercise 5 days per week or 20 to 60 minutes of vigorous exercise 3 days per week. Workouts can be broken down into multiple parts throughout the day or done all at once. So, if you wake up early in the morning, you can work out for 15 minutes. On your lunch break, go do a 20-minute workout. And then whenever you get home at night, do a 15-minute workout. And that's 50 minutes for the day. And last, start off slow and at a low intensity to avoid injury. Resistance exercise per the ACSM, it is recommended to work out all muscle groups throughout the week 2 to 3 times. Individuals that are elderly or just beginning to exercise should do so at a lower intensity. Strength and power is achieved by performing 2 to 4 sets of a particular workout. For each exercise, 8 to 12 repetitions improve strength and power, while 15 to 20 repetitions improve muscular endurance. There should be at least 2 days of recovery between each resistance training workout. Flexibility exercise by the ACSM suggests increased range of motion is gained by doing flexibility exercise multiple times a week. Each stretch should be held for 10 to 30 seconds to the point of tightness or slight discomfort. Repeat each stretch 2 to 4 times, accumulating 60 seconds or more. Static, dynamic, ballistic, and proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation stretches are all effective. Flexibility exercises is most effective when the muscle is warm. Try light aerobic activity or a hot bath to warm the muscles before stretching. Neuromotor exercise is essentially training for your body to know where it is in space. Neuromotor exercise, sometimes called functional fitness training, is recommended for 2 to 3 days per week. Exercises should involve motor skills, balance, agility, coordination, and gait. Proprioceptive exercise training, multifaceted activities such as Tai Chi and yoga to improve physical function. 20 to 30 minutes per day is recommended for neuromotor exercise. Now on to behavior change. The definition as from UNICEF is it is a research-based consultative process for addressing knowledge, attitudes, and practices. It provides relevant information and motivation through well-defined strategies, using a mix of media channels and participatory methods. Behavior change strategies focus on the individual as a locus of change. Which brings us to a great question. Is change hard? Yes, it is, because first of all, life sucks. And second, we are creatures of habit. Often we are motivated by negatives such as guilt, fear, or regret. Now, these have a huge effect on our lives because if something affects us negatively, we do not want to change that. So if this change is going to bring back hardships and whatnot, we are going to stay the course and stay on our regular path. Now, as for Harvard Health publication stated, successful change comes only in stages. How long it takes is an individual matter. How to overcome hard change. Per the Harvard Health publication, a study was conducted with 129 studies of behavior change strategies. The British research group found that the least effective approaches were those that encourage a sense of fear or regret. So that's saying, if I feel uncomfortable with something or I just don't feel right, I'm going to stay on the path that I know I feel more comfortable with. Next, they also said, set easier goals to reach in a shorter amount of time. So they're saying is like, take a guy who can deadlift 200 pounds. He says his goal is 500 pounds. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but maybe we should start off a little lower, maybe at 250 pounds to get some joy so he doesn't lose fate. Theories and models. There are several different models that help define how behavior change comes about. We've learned about most of these in class, so I'm just going to go over them. Trans-theoretical model, social cognitive theory, theory of planned behavior, healthy behavior model, and social ecological model. Now, my two favorite are the trans-theoretical model and theory of planned behavior. By far, the trans-theoretical model is my favorite model because you can see how the behavior is progressing step by step. There are 6 stages in the trans-theoretical model. The first stage is pre-contemplation, during which people are sedentary and are not even considering an activity program. These people do not see activity as relevant in their lives. Some ways we can try to convince them is to provide information about the risk of being inactive and the benefits of being active. The second stage is contemplation. People in the contemplation stage are still sedentary. However, they are starting to consider the importance of activity and have begun to identify the implications of being inactive. Some ways to try to get them to get to the next stage is to get them involved in some type of activity. Some ways we can do that is provide opportunities to ask a lot of questions and express apprehensions, provide information about exercise in general, and provide information about different types of activity options. The third stage is preparation and is marked by some physical activity. As individuals are mentally and physically preparing to adopt an activity program, activity during the preparation stage may be sporadic walk or even a periodic visit to the gym, but it is inconsistent. So one way we could get them to the next stage is get them to do regular physical activity. So we can do this by providing the opportunity to be active, provide a lot of support, feedback, and reinforcement. The fourth stage is action. During this stage, people engage in regular physical activity but have been doing so for less than 6 months. So we're on the right track now. They're maintaining regular physical activity. The ways to encourage them is provide continued support and feedback, identify things in events that are potential barriers to adherence, and identify high-risk individuals and situations. The fifth stage is maintenance, which is marked by a regular physical activity participation. We want to try to prevent relapse and maintain continued activity. Some ways we can go about this is maintain social support from family and friends and from within the exercise environment. Provide continued education about barrier identification and keep the exercise environment enjoyable and switch it up to fight boredom. The sixth and final stage is termination. In this stage, there is no temptation or relapse to go back to old behavior. There is 100% self-efficacy, which means you believe in yourself. My final thoughts about the trans-theoretical model. Think of it as a circle and or as a cycle that you would go through as pre-contemplation as the interest of going into that circle. At any point, you can get out of that circle by reverting back to old behavior. But one can make a full cycle through that circle and come out on the other side, which is a termination, where you will not go back to old behavior. Strengths of the trans-theoretical model. It can be used by all levels of athletes, beginner to expert. A huge benefit for the trans-theoretical model is its application to intervene by targeting one or more behaviors. One major strength of the trans-theoretical model is its potential to tailor its constructs to appropriately fit an individual's readiness to begin a behavior. Trans-theoretical model has a capability to combine clinical and public health interventions, thus maximizing success in health behavior change. A study was conducted using the trans-theoretical model, comparing over 120 separate studies that were analyzed between 1984 and 2003 that examined the consistency of the trans-theoretical model within and across 48 different health behaviors. These studies concluded that the trans-theoretical model does work well with health and wellness programs, thus creating a correlation with health and wellness programs and exercise. The theory of planned behavior has been used successfully to predict and explain a wide range of health behaviors and intentions, including smoking and drinking. The planned behavior states that behavioral achievements depends on both motivation and ability. It distinguishes between three types of belief: behavioral, normative, and control. Attitudes. This refers to the degree which a person has a favorable or unfavorable evaluation of the behavior of interest. It entails a consideration of the outcomes of performing the behavior, which correlates with subjective norms. This refers to the belief about whether most people approve or disapprove of the behavior. It relates to a person's belief about whether peers and people of importance to the person think he or she should engage in the behavior. Social norms. This refers to the customary codes of behavior in a group or people, which correlates with perceived behavioral control. This refers to a person's perception of the ease or difficulty of performing the behavior of interest. Perceived behavioral control varies across situations and actions, which result in a person having varying perceptions of behavioral control depending on the situation. All three, attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control, correlates into behavioral intention. This refers to the motivational factors that influence a given behavior, where the stronger the intention to perform the behavior, the more likely the behavior will perform. There are limitations to the theory of planned behavior. It assumes that the person has acquired the resources necessary to be successful in performing the desired behavior. It does not account for other variables that factor into behavioral intention and motivation, such as fear, threat, mood, or past experiences. While it does consider normative influences, it still does not take into account environmental or economic factors that may influence a person's intention to perform a behavior. It assumes that behavior is the result of a linear decision-making process and does not consider that it can change over time. While the added construct of perceived behavioral control was an important addition to the theory, it doesn't stipulate anything about actual control over behavior. The time frame between intent and behavioral action is not addressed by this theory. A study used the theory of planned behavior on pregnant women to determine their intention for exercising. They used a cross-sectional survey and self-administered tools, which was developed specifically for this study. 621 women were a part of this study and had to be in at least the 12th week of gestation. Findings say that 59% of women were found to be likely to exercise regularly up to labor. The most influential factor in determining intention to exercise was perceived behavioral control, followed by the subjective norm. Attitude did not significantly influence their intentions. I conclude that the individual's intention to exercise is directly tailored to behavioral changes. Exercise is subjective, and each person's definition of exercise depends on each person's behavior.